Thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. An end to the government shutdown may finally be in sight, but flight cancellations could drag on. We explore why. A controversial bill allowing people who are terminally ill to end their lives heads to Governor Pritzker's desk. We hear from groups on both sides of the issue.
When this wet, warm air mass hits land and starts to cool again, whammo, lake effect snow.
And we got our first taste of winter this morning, but what exactly is lake effect snow? We explain. First off tonight, the federal government shutdown may be coming to an end. Senators are expected to begin a series of votes tonight to reopen the government. But Illinois senators are divided on the proposed compromise. Last night, Senator Dick Durbin was one of 8 Democrats that voted to advance the measure that would extend government funding until January 30th. It also restores full funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, through September 2026. The bill also reverses the mass firings of federal workers by the Trump administration since the shutdown began and gave workers back pay. However, the agreement notably does not address the expiring health care tax credits, besides promising a future Senate vote on the issue, sparking pushback from many Democrats, including Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois. For more on the government shutdown deal and statements from both of Illinois senators, check out our website. Though federal immigration agents say they came under fire over the weekend while conducting a raid in Little Village, Mayor Brandon Johnson says he has questions.
Now, we don't have much information on this particular incident. Unfortunately, Bavino and his team have absolutely no credibility because of the repeated lies both to the courts and to the public, so we have no way to verify the reports.
Johnson says federal authorities are investigating the incident, but he still faults the federal government for inciting chaos and putting Chicago police officers between them and frustrated protesters. And the city of Chicago is already making big plans for New Year's Eve.
4, 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year!
For the first time in its 50-year history, Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve celebration is including a live countdown to midnight from a central time zone from downtown Chicago. The show will also go live from New York City's Times Square, as it has every year for the last 55 years, in addition to having a Spanish-language live broadcast from Puerto Rico. The city says more details are on the way. Up next, air travel has taken a hit during the government shutdown. Could things be returning to normal soon? We'll find out right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
The historically long government shutdown may finally be coming to an end. Senators are expected to vote tonight on the bipartisan compromise before going to the House. Part of what applied pressure on lawmakers to strike a deal was the cancellation of thousands of flights at major airports as air traffic controllers were going unpaid, along with other federal workers. But even with an end to the shutdown in sight, air travel may still be turbulent amid an ongoing shortage of air traffic controllers. Joining us now are Joseph Schofer, a civil engineering professor at Northwestern University, Robert Mark, a retired pilot, former air traffic controller, and publisher of the aviation blog Jetwine, and Daryl English, a TSA officer at Midway Airport and president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 777, a union representing TSA agents in Illinois and Wisconsin. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks to all of you for joining us.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you.
Robert Mark, I want to start with you. President Trump, he took to social media to criticize the number of air traffic controllers who have been missing work, some protesting the shutdown, others picking up second jobs because they need to make ends meet. They've been going for a while without a paycheck. The president wrote, quote, "For those that did nothing but complain and took time off, even though everyone knew they would be paid in full shortly into the future, I am not happy with you. You didn't step up to help the USA." Robert, is it reasonable to expect air traffic controllers to work without pay indefinitely?
Thank you, Dan. No, I mean, and I meant that sarcastically because I think the president sounded very parental at that point. And he has never worked in a job like this. And these people have been struggling to pay their bills. And he has no idea what it's like for someone to work 6-day weeks, 10-hour days, and still have to try to find time for another job, driving an Uber, delivering things in order to pay the bills.
Daryl, 7 Senate Democrats, 1 independent senator, they all joined Republicans in passing a continuing resolution to fund the government, or agreeing on a continuing resolution to fund the government. And that's, of course, a major step towards ending the shutdown, with an end possibly in sight. What has this shutdown been like for you as a TSA officer and for your co-workers at O'Hare and Midway airports?
Well, for the officers in our local, most of this has been very fatiguing, very troublesome. These officers have been through over a month without any pay, sacrificed their livelihoods, put themselves in jeopardy as far as bill collections. So to see this possibly come to an end is something that, we are looking forward to. But they have also dedicated themselves to be able to make sure that the flying public is secure as possible.
Have you heard from any members who have said, I'm going to have to cut out of work for a little bit so that I can go find other work because I need to earn a paycheck?
Yes, we've had officers that have taken on second jobs, additional type of work. We have also had officers that have resigned because they could not continue the process of not being paid. There's a lot of things that the officers are going through and have been through. But they have continued to be faithful to making sure that the traveling public is secure. But needless to say, these officers have sacrificed a lot and have willing to and continue to sacrifice, but they have gone through a lot to make sure that the flying public is secure.
Joseph, last week, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced a temporary 10% reduction in flights. What does that mean in practice?
What it means is that a lot of people are not going to be able to make the trips that they plan to take. I think there are a couple of parts to this. One is the massive uncertainty that it presents to people traveling. The difficulty in finding another option, which means either not traveling at a different time, or traveling on a different mode, which in the United States for trips over 500 miles is really unlikely. It's really impossible. But the uncertainty is important. And I think the one thing that we don't talk about much is, in addition to the several thousand flights that are canceled, flight delays are up very considerably. So O'Hare Airport, for example, this afternoon had a 2.5-hour ground stop, which means all inbound aircraft are held at their origin for safety. And really what's happening is we're trying to reduce the work effort of the remaining air traffic controllers. That is to moderate the number of flights that they have to operate per hour. And that means delays and it means cancellations.
I would imagine an airport like O'Hare with a 2-hour ground stop, that's going to create ripple effects across the sector in this country. Joseph Schofer, if the government does reopen in the next few days, will airports be able to resume business as usual, or will it take some time to literally get back up to speed?
It's going to take some time because what you're really saying is, well, we will pay you, but we're not going to pay you instantly. So people are in the same situation in a week that they were last week. So that'll take some time for people to respond and to rebuild the capacity. But I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is the overall ATC system is not particularly resilient because they've been understaffed for years and under technology for years, and we've let that go. So this is a lesson. It's really a case of a crisis that gives us an opportunity to rethink the system and build in some resilience in the long term, not only for a crazy situation like this, but also for weather disasters.
Yeah, and to that point, as you said, the FAA is short about 3,000 air traffic controllers, many working with outdated technology. Robert, the shutdown has put a spotlight on this problem and the need for reforming the air traffic control system, as Joseph just said, potentially moving it outside the Federal Aviation Administration altogether or privatizing it. What do you make of those possibilities?
I think the FAA, if it were listening to me, I would say, please don't try to do too many things at one time. Let's get this shutdown figured out. Get the controllers back to work in a way that they get paid, and keep training new people, and worry about the system under which FAA operates the air traffic control system figured out a little bit later.
Daryl, even if the House does sign off on the Senate's deal to reopen the government, that funding only carries through January. How are TSA agents feeling about their job security with the threat of another shutdown possibly looming in January?
Well, it's going to still weigh heavily on their minds because even though, like you said, the government may open up, they still will be concerned about it closing back down later on. So that's going to limit them from being able to move forward on maybe taking trips, paying for certain things. They're going to basically try to prepare themselves for it to happen again. And again, a lot of that pressure they're putting themselves into will limit them on whether they want to continue their working career with TSA or possibly move to somewhere else where it's more stable.
Robert, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, largest union representing air traffic controllers, has been calling for legislators in Washington, both Democrat and Republican, of course, to resolve the shutdown. They've been calling for this for weeks. How would you describe the relationship between the controllers and government officials?
I think the relationship is always somewhat stressed. It has been for many decades, going back to the controller strike back in 1981. The system never really recovered from that, and it's been getting along. It inches along here and there until there's some weather crisis or there's a technology failure, and then it becomes a front page headline. But I think the controllers union is doing the best that it can to work with the administration, and because they want to see these people get paid.
I'm sure they do. Okay, well, fingers crossed. Whatever may come out of Washington, that the skies are still safe. That is where we'll have to leave it, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us, Joseph Schofer, Robert Mark, and Daryl English.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, a controversial bill allowing people who are terminally ill to end their lives. Both sides of the debate share their thoughts. Terminally ill people in Illinois may soon be able to end their lives with medical assistance. State lawmakers recently passed the controversial Medical Aid in Dying bill that now heads to the governor's desk. Supporters of the measure say it gives those who are already dying a compassionate way to go. But opponents say the measure would worsen longstanding healthcare disparities, particularly for individuals with disabilities and people who live below the poverty line. Joining us now with more on the bill are Kadeen Bennett, the Director of Advocacy and Intergovernmental Affairs at the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois, and Amber Smock, Vice President of Advocacy at Access Living. Thanks to you both for joining us. So, Kadeen, starting with you, this bill has passed both houses in the General Assembly. Governor Pritzker says that he is considering it. He's reviewing it before signing it into law or not signing it into law. Why do you think this law is needed?
It's needed because of people like Deb, who this bill is named after, people who are terminal, 6 months or less to live, who want to live, but they know that they're going to die. There are people who've tried every kind of clinical treatment trial, and they know that at some point they are going to die a pretty painful death. So this will bring Illinois in line with 11 other states in the District of Columbia to add another end-of-life option for people who are terminal.
And briefly, you named Deb, for whom this law is named.
Yeah.
Who is Deb?
So Deb Robertson, she is an advocate who's been working on this bill in the last year and a half, 2 years. She's somebody who was diagnosed with a pretty rare form of cancer, and it's been her mission to make sure that this bill becomes a law in Illinois. And as of right now, we don't know if Deb will make it to when this bill is signed. It's a 9-month before it goes into effect, but it's so important for her because one of the things she worries about, and in the networks that she's a part of with other people of this kind of cancer, is the knowledge that at the end it is very, very painful. There's no kind of medical breakthrough. Pain is something that is real, and this would give her a peace of mind knowing that this can be an option.
Amber, your group, though, you all have said that this bill would hurt those with disabilities, people who are lacking health care access. How so?
So right now, something like 82% of physicians actually have reported that they regard people with significant disabilities as having lower quality of life. And a good deal of this bill's discussion is about whether or not people are having quality of life. Now, the bill is technically designed to serve people who have 6 months or less to live. But the problem with that is that you're predicating a bill on something that is actually not reliable. Medical diagnosis of having 6 months or less to live is actually not that good of a predictor as to what will actually happen to people. Plenty of people live past the diagnosis, plenty of people live, with a little less time than that. But what we are trying to get across for people with disabilities is that, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. What we're trying to get across for people with disabilities is that you just really don't know the day-to-day existence of disabled lives and what we deal with when we go to the doctor. So when I say that you go to the doctor, you can't know for sure if your doctor is going to give you the best possible recommendation, because maybe your doctor actually has a disability problem. How can you count on that being really healthcare? And right now, this bill is offering suicide as a healthcare measure, and I don't think anyone will call that healthcare.
Can I just say, I think for people like Deb who've talked about what this option would mean for them, they're very clear that this is not suicide. These are people who want to live and they know that they're going to die. They're part of her doing every single clinical trial is because she really wants to live, but she knows that the end is going to happen and she wants to have control. And we see this as a type of bodily autonomy. People who are facing a terminal illness should have the right to make the best decision for them. And for some people, that may mean using medical aid in dying. And for some people, just the idea that they have access to this medication could be all that they need for them to feel comfortable at the end.
And for people with disabilities, that kind of choice doesn't actually exist. So a lot of people do want to be certain about the end of their life. They want to know what's going to happen with them. But for a lot of people with disabilities, the choice on how to live their lives is actually a day-by-day process. And right now, there are a lot of people who don't actually experience real choice because there is so much of their lives that is outside of their control. They may not have access to housing. They might not have access to home and community-based services. They may not have access to pain mitigation. Those are the things that we should be looking at, not offering yet another way to die.
Kadeen, some lawmakers have raised concern about there not being enough safeguards and not enough guardrails in place to ensure that that people aren't being basically coerced into life-ending treatment. What are those guardrails?
So a lot of the law is patient-directed. So if you're a terminal person, you have the capacity to give informed consent, you're an adult, so over 18, and you have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, then you can start the process. So that means that you would have to speak to an attending doctor, confirm your terminal diagnosis. There has to be a consulting doctor to confirm your terminal diagnosis to make sure that you are not simply depressed, that you would give an oral request, a written request, another oral request. There's a 5-day waiting period before the first oral request and the second oral request. There are guardrails in the language that makes it clear that somebody, that you can't be coerced. If anyone were to coerce you, they can, they could be civilly or criminally criminally prosecuted for that. There's language that says that an insurance company can't condition care on somebody using medical aid in dying. So if this became law, then your insurance company can't say, we're not going to do those other end-of-life options, where they have to continue to provide the care that they already provide there. There's language that says that for the written request, there has to be a statement and witnesses. One of those witnesses can't be somebody who in any way benefits from the law. So we have a lot of protections in place.
So, Amber, what are your thoughts on some of those guardrails? Are they not enough?
Yeah, so I think Kadeen is listing a lot of guardrails, but every single one of those guardrails have workarounds. They do. And I want to point out specifically the insurance industry. We know that the insurance industry's bottom line is money. It's not human interest. And that is a really big problem when you have instances like such as what happened in California. There was a case where a woman needed coverage for chemo, but the insurance company wouldn't cover it. They said instead, we'll cover lethal medication if you want to kill yourself. So you cannot control insurance companies to the extent that you might like to. In addition, I would also say that if the governor signs this, and I certainly hope he doesn't because it's going to create a problem. If the governor signs this, what is going to happen is it's now a law. And the thing about laws is you can come back with amendments. And there certainly are people who are significant proponents of going even further than what this law does. They want to shorten the time that it takes to get there. They want to make sure that people from out of state can access it. And ultimately, we're going to see what happened in Canada, where people come back and say, let's open it up to more groups of people that want to kill themselves.
So to that point, though, I think the first law in Oregon was passed in 1994. It went into effect in 1997. And there are, as I said before, 11 states and DC that have the law in the books. This slippery slope argument hasn't played out in the U.S. And that's what we're talking about, a law that hopefully will become a law in the U.S. What's happening in Canada has nothing to do with this conversation about terminally ill people who want to be able to choose for themselves an end-of-life option that has been proven to be medically okay. We've not seen some of these concerns that's been raised in other states.
Couple seconds left, Amber. Go ahead. I'll let you have the last word. 15 seconds.
What happened in Canada has everything to do with what's happening here. People are humans. The movement for assisted death is a global movement. And so we are very concerned that what happened in Canada, what people should understand, is that Canada opened up assisted suicide to people with disabilities. It is as simple as going online, filling out a form like at the DMV, and now 5% of all deaths in Canada nationwide are through lethal medication.
All right, that's where we'll have to leave it. Still awaiting the governor's decision on this to sign or not. Kadeen Bennett, Amber Smock, thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we're back with more right after this. Illinois and Indiana residents are digging themselves out after the season's first winter storm. And depending on where you live, you may have been shoveling for a while. Northwest Indiana and Chicago's far north suburbs were the hardest hit due to the lake effect. But what exactly causes lake effect snow? Our Patty Wetley breaks down the weather phenomenon in this edition of WTTW News Explains.
Between the wind and the cold and the sun disappearing for what seems like months at a time, winter in Chicago is not for the faint of heart. But it could be worse. We could live in one of these cities, the snowiest in the U.S. Notice a pattern here? They're all on the wrong side of a Great Lake. And by wrong side, we mean the side most likely to get socked with lake effect snow. Oh yeah, the lake effect snow machine is real. It's unpredictable and capable of dumping tons of snow in a short amount of time. And just because we're on the right side of the lake doesn't mean we're safe. When the wind turns on Chicago, watch out. So what causes lake effect snow? Two things, cold air and comparatively warmer water. Here's how it works. During a typical Midwestern winter, cold winds swoop in from the north, which, not to point fingers, usually means Canada. The Great Lakes hold onto their heat longer than the surrounding land, so when this cold air passes over the warmer water, it soaks up moisture like a sponge. Depending which way the wind is blowing, it might cross a lot of water. And the more water it travels over, the more moisture it picks up. When this wet, warm air mass hits land and starts to cool again, whammo, lake effect snow. The weirdest thing about lake effect snow is how it can fall fast and furious in one place while the sun is shining just a mile or two away. Storm? What storm? That's because unlike large weather systems, lake effect events tend to be hyper-local. So what keeps Chicago from being Buffalo? Well, here, wind patterns typically flow west to east, pushing that wet, warm air toward Indiana and Michigan. Sorry, not sorry. But when the winds switch, that's when the city gets a taste of the snowpocalypse. Chicago winter. It could be worse, and sometimes it is. Thanks, lake effect snow.
And now you know. For more in our series, WTTW News Explains, check out our website. And that's our show for this Monday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that gives back to its community in Chicago and beyond.